Okay, so we are going to move on to our next speaker, who is also going to be talking about success in activism. And she is a huge name in the world of Uyghur activism. So we have Rushan Abbas, who will be covering success in advocacy as well. She is an Uyghur American activist residing in Virginia. She has worked closely with members of Congress since the 1990s and played an important role in the establishment of the Uyghur American Association in 1998. In 2017, Rushan founded Campaign for Uyghurs to advocate for the Uyghur cause, and it has been a success ever since. We're going to hear from her right now.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this extremely important event. As youth, having your voices raised against the injustice that many people in the world have become apathetic about is incredibly important and a wonderful source of encouragement for the Uyghur community in diaspora. My name is Rushan Abbas, and I am the founder and the executive director of Campaign for Uyghurs. I am an Uyghur American. Our mission is to advocate for the human rights and the democratic freedoms for Uyghurs and the other Turkic people in East Turkestan. We have a special emphasis on empowering women and youth for advocacy. I became involved in activism as a university student in 1980s when I participated in pro-democracy protests in our homeland. Since my arrival in the United States in 1989, I have continued to advocate for my people, for their freedom and their democratic rights, most recently making advocacy my full-time work as a result of my personal tragedy, a tragedy faced by most of the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs of East Turkestan, referred to by the Chinese government as the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, have been the victims of the oppression by the Chinese Communist Party for decades, most recently culminating with the building of concentration camps in which Uyghurs are imprisoned based on their ethnic identity alone and having committed no crime. The Uyghurs are becoming the Chinese government's nationalistic racism. I watched my husband's entire family disappeared into the camps. And when I spoke out about this, my own sister, a retired medical doctor, was abducted by the Chinese government. I have no word from her since September 2018. It seems unbelievable that in this, the 21st century, another Holocaust could be occurring. But that is exactly what's happening. What's happening in East Turkestan today is the Chinese Communist Party's version of Hitler's final solution. A high-level Chinese government official, Hu Lianhe, said that the Uyghur problem must be taken to the final solution stage. The Chinese government's official documents published in the Chinese media stated that the government must first break the Uyghurs' lineage, break their roots, break their connections, and break their origin. The harsh policies the government has enacted have been justified and labeled as fighting a war on terror. Now, the concentration camps hold 3 million Uyghurs. Leaked Chinese documents stating no mercy reveal the true heart of the Chinese government is not for the ethnic harmony, as they often claim on their propagandas. And most appallingly, even in the West, most media outlets aren't covering these atrocities on the primetime news. And typically, the vocal activists and the celebrities are quiet because of their ties to the Chinese economy and the Chinese market, the benefits they receive, and the Uyghurs are becoming the collateral damages. China continues to use trade threats, manipulation, bullying, and wolf warrior diplomacy to get its way, while its crimes are ignored and even rewarded. In fact, the Chinese government has labeled any groups that don't worship the Communist Party as dangerous separatists without addressing the massive injustice that have been continually committed against the non-Han Chinese people. The Chinese government's willingness to form concentration camps and its so-called re-education policies are indicative of the party's lack of humanity or respect for the human dignity and rights. Right now, the situation for Uyghurs are about survival. It's about existence. When the camps were first brought to the attention of the international community, China claims that they did not exist. When satellite imagery and the further proof came out, they completely changed their tone to state that these camps were for vocational training and that students were there as a volunteer. This didn't explain the guard towers, mass purchases of pepper spray, stun guns, handguns, and the other materials that have no place in a school or any educational system. But China has never cared much for the truth. When many prominent Uyghur intellectuals and the people like my sister, a medical doctor who has no need of vocational training, also went missing. China continued by branding all efforts of cultural extermination as preventing extremism, and this has proved all too convenient by their simultaneous development for the Belt and Road Initiative. While China extends its reach across the globe, the Uyghurs have continued to have their property seized, be thrown into concentration camps, and are sent out as enslaved workers across China to various factories. Yes, as most Chinese sheltered at home during the virus outbreak, the COVID-19, and the economy plunged, China saw the opportunity to remedy two problems and began sending Uyghurs who had graduated from the camps to work in the factories across China as slaves. This gives the opportunity to force labor, force slaves to scatter, concealing the evidence of China's crimes against humanity by dispersing the numbers, and also give the opportunity to jumpstart the economy at a time when no one else was willing to work because of the virus. In the factories, Uyghurs are not allowed to leave their dormitories without permission. They are literally slaves. Many of the companies that benefit from this slavery are brands that you know very well. The rightful inhabitants of East Turkestan have been imprisoned so that the majority of Han Chinese can live in the Uyghurs' houses, take their land, and even their way with their women, while the husbands are in the prison. They are forbidden from using their mother language and encouraged to sing literally the praises of Xi Jinping and the Communist Party in a situation that resembles the surrealistic environment of North Korea, but is in fact far more sinister because Western countries are far more complicit in making China economically able to carry out these crimes against humanity. What's happening to Uyghurs today is active genocide. Many of these crimes resemble something from a dark novel, 1984, but they are fortunately all too true. The path to becoming an advocate begins by walking up to the realities happening in the world around us. We must be willing to emotionally invest ourselves while maintaining hope. We must also develop tools that will allow us to let others join us, or our activism will be largely inactive. My recommendations for youth are to never underestimate yourself or your ability, your voice. You have a unique ability to use your voice in ways others cannot. One of the most effective advocates for the Uyghurs has been Firuze Aziz, a teenager activist who used her TikTok account to film the makeup tutorial while she was fixing her eyelashes, during which she spoke about the atrocities happening to the Uyghurs. That kind of creativity and boldness is desperately needed, especially as the average person still has not heard of the Uyghurs or what's happening to them. We must commit it in educating ourselves continually and in sharing what we learn with others at every step of our journey. I have a few tips that I believe will help you start on your journey of activism. First, learn all that you can and from reputable sources. Remember that media has an agenda. Learn all that you can about recognizing what agenda and about rhetoric behind the messaging. Learning to recognize the logic behind the arguments is an essential part of a good education. Network with organizations and do not be afraid to reach out and ask questions, ask for help. People who are advocating for human rights are in desperate need of more voices. Ask what you can do, ask for resources, ask for whatever you need, and ask them to help you to make connections. Use social media and learn to use it effectively. Don't be afraid to share good social media posts and tag government officials, celebrities, or anyone that you think should take notice. Ask your local news stations and media outlets to cover the causes you think are important. Know the goals of your activism. While it's wonderful to support other organizations, having your own activism strategy is also very important. Perhaps your goal is to create grassroots organization, or to see legislation passed, or even to see a petition reach in a certain magnitude. Defining goals and how you want others to help carry out these goals is extremely important. Have a view of the type of world that you want to create and live in as a broad picture groundwork for hope. Know how the individual actions you pursue fit in with this world you want to create or change you want to see. Understand that human nature and the people themselves are often really complicated. And while right and wrong are fairly black and white, the ways that people rights wrongs are not always. Be firm in your convictions, but be kind. Be willing to dialogue and educate with the belief that people can change. Do not purposely alienate or create enemies by using unnecessarily polarizing language. Ask people for specific things personally. Let people know how they can help you and be bold. The worst that can happen is that they say no. Finally, remember that effective activism requires fortitude, persistence, and longevity. Do not give up, even in the midst of discouragements. Advocacy isn't always about taking on the cause that's popular, but it is taking on the cause that's right. What's happening to the Uyghurs is abhorrent, truly crimes against humanity, but we see how other countries are carved into silence, often for economic reasons. So when you take on advocacy, know that you won't always be admired for your efforts. And thus, it's essential to have character and confidence in what you are doing and to let that sustain you even through the hard times. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rushan Abbas. She also couldn't be here today to give us her speech live, but she very kindly provided some advice for us in advance. So we're really happy to be able to share all of that with you. There are a lot of amazing points she made about social media activism and how to support your community. So I hope we can all learn from her advice.